Hello guys, today we'll be learning about APIs. We will start by learning the folder structure, then we'll move on to writing APIs, then adding validation to them, also how to put rate limit on the APIs, and also handle middleware. Starting with the folder structure, it is a good practice to separate our coding part, our test, and our documents. So you can see I have three main folders over here in our whole code base. We have test folder, we have document folder, and our app folder. So any kind of test that you might write after finishing your code base or after finishing your APIs should go into test folder. Any kind of documents that may help other developer understand the code base, how to set it up and other things should go to documents. And all our coding part, where the actual code is written, should go to our app directory. Now inside the app directory, you can see there are other folders also. So we'll go one by one explain them. The API folder will contain all our APIs in it. We have version 1, version 2. That basically means how to add versioning to your API. So any APIs that starting point of your APIs would go to version 1, and once you have completed your one set of versions, you can move on to version 2 while keeping your previous records, so that the any other person that is using your API won't have to face issue when you upgrade your API. Second is the core. Core basically contains any kind of configurations, database strings, and those kind of things. So if you want to connect to your DB, that is a core thing. So that should come here. If you want to connect to any third-party services like for authentication, that should also come over here. So any kind of configuration, you can put it over here. Next is middleware. So middleware basically whenever someone communicate with your backend, it will run in the background. It will check, it can be your authentication, it can be your rate limiting, it can be your logging, lots of things. And model is basically your schema, the structure of your APIs, the DB of, like, let's say of user. So we have username, in the user we have the first name, last name, that is the schema of that user. So that's where we put them here. Next is service. Service is any kind of supporting functions, or main function could also be the main function that you want to run whenever you, like, that can be reusable function that you want to run after API endpoint is hit or something. Next are the utilities functions. You can think of these as helper functions that you want to be reused like in different APIs and others. So a good example would be converting all your daytime into a specific kind of time zone. Another could be to get some random number that you might want to reuse in different APIs. So you can put in your utilities function. So another next is the environment. So this is like a stable. Here you will put any kind of sensitive information. It can be your database string, it can be your auth communication strings, it can be your port number, it can be lots of things. So any kind of sensitive thing that you don't want to publish to or show it to user should goes over here. Next is git ignore. These are all the files that we ignore while pushing it to our GitHub or any your whatever the directory or repository you're using. So common practice is to put, we should not push our env files, we should not put our sensitive data, we should not push our environment variables, and our environment folder also. Next is Docker file. If you are using a Docker container or for hosting or anything, you can containerize your application using a simple Docker file like this. And the next is the main file. Main file is basically the starting point of our whole code base. This is what we ran so that our whole code base runs. Next is the readme. Readme is for our data and GitHub, so that whenever user comes or someone comes to our GitHub, they understand how what the code base is about, what is the backend doing actually. And last is the requirement.txt, and this is what is essential for our backend to run. These are all the modules that we need in order for us backend to run smoothly. So this is like the basic folder structure. It is need to be like exactly same for all the folders. It's just the basic layout. You can add it to your needs, but these are like the basic folders that most APIs or database, most backend systems have. Next, we'll be moving on to setting up our backend. So first, before we start anything, we should always create a virtual environment for our backend so that it is separated from our existing system and we don't isolate it from our other modules or any other systems we have in our computer. So to create a virtual environment, first you have to make sure your virtual environment is installed. So to make sure a virtual environment is installed, you can just run virtual environment hyphen version, and then it will tell you if the virtual env is installed in your system. So virtual env is just a module that helps us to create a virtual environment. So you can see it is already installed, and if by chance if it's not installed in your system, you can just pip install it, and this will install in your system. Since I already have installed, so I won't do it. So another point is that we have to go to your app directory. We don't create a virtual environment in our whole code base. We should always create in our coding point. So we'll go to the C, and here we'll create our virtual environment, and we can create a virtual environment using this simple command virtual environment and the name of the environment. For our case it is env, and I can run this. As you can see, it has created this env file, and all our libraries that we'll be installing will be installed in this folder. Now to activate this, so we just have to use virtual environment env, then we have to go to bin, and then you have to, there is activate. We just have to run this file activate, and it will create a virtual environment. As you can see, we have this env in our parenthesis. That means the virtual environment is live. Now next is installing all our modules. So it's good practice to keep all your modules in a requirement.txt. Here we know that the FastAPI this version, we need Uvicorn for this version, we need slow API for this version. So we can just write it pip install -r, that means to read the file, and requirement.txt, and enter, and it will collectively install all these files. It should be fast enough. Yep, as you can see, all these files are installed. I can check them by using pip list, and this will show all the libraries that are installed in this virtual environment. These are some, there are some which are pre-made by the environment, but mostly whichever we need are already in here. Like you see Uvicorn here. Now next point is to start the coding point. So we'll go to the main file, and here we'll basically create import our FastAPI. So all our coding starts from this point, this file. So we will have to make sure. So you can import FastAPI from and nope, I don't think so. Oh, sorry. From FastAPI, and then we can just create FastAPI. So I am using cursor, so AI also helps us to write the code faster. You should also try to configure some AI agent in your IDE, whether it's VS Code or cursor. So we need FastAPI, we need Uvicorn, and we need also, let's start with this one. So it means, right, so what this code means, basically it means like we have created an instance of FastAPI, and through this line we have created an endpoint slash, and that will allow us to return a message hello world. Now to run this, we basically just have to run the main file, python main, and you can see our code base is live. So to check this out, let us go to this URL on our computer, and let us go to localhost 8000, and you can see that hello world message that we have right over here is coming back like hello world code, and if we return it, save it, and it should give us hello world code. Okay, we'll have to rerun the server and say yep, hello world code. So another thing that you can do is actually pretty good thing, that instead of every time stopping the server and rerunning the server, we can have a reload that will automatically check if it's there and changes in our code base, it will make them live. So we can add it like reload true and save. So now every time I make some change, code true, and if I stop this now and run, One second. Oh, sorry, my mistake. So this one should be main.app. Yep. Yep. So now every time you run some save this code hero, you can see our application started again, and it's without having to restore the code, it already here. So this is just tells us like to connect to which string. So main should be connected to this app, which is the name of our folder. Now next thing is to how to add APIs. So that is the main point. So we can go to the API folder. In version 1 we have admin. It's completely empty here right now. So let's start with writing one simple API. So writing a simple API you can just use from FastAPI. Now one thing we need is the router. Router help us to basically separate our endpoints. Have instead of having one large file where we have all our APIs, we can create different files, and each file will have one router, and we can import them in our main file. That allows us to basically have more structured code base. So we need API router, and we need HTTP from FastAPI. We need HTTP exceptions. Okay, yep. Now you can see I have written this simple APIs. Now I need to import them over here. FastAPI from API.version admin. I'm importing the router as admin router. Now I just need to add that router over here. App.include router, admin router, and we have given a prefix that is basically the name before it and the tag admin. Now if I go to my URL, another cool thing that super token FastAPI does is it gives us a documentation page. So if we go to localhost 8000/docs, it will provide us all our APIs in a like with a UI, which is like much easier for us. So you can see we have the admin API over here. If I call this one hello world hero, and we can see here hello world hero from admin. Let us add that hello world hero from admin. So this is how we add APIs. So this is how we add get API. Now we can add post APIs, we can have update APIs. So similar like that we can have APIs. Next thing is to add validation. To add validation, basically we have to create a model. Now to create a model, we use a library called Pydantic, which allows us to have some base model, and we can use base model, and we can also use, and we have admin. So you can see we have admin. We don't need datetime and for now let's just keep it simple. So we have admin which has a username, email, and password. Now we'll try to import this one in over here from models to import admin. So now you can see this one will create only accept an admin. So if you want to give a response, no, not response, and we need a response of let's say if we try to pass some other response, so that it should not work. Let's say if I pass response admin, right? Let us leave this. Let me delete these two APIs, not needed. So yeah, you can see this one is normal API get request, and this one has a response model of admin. So what will happen if I try to return this, run this API? Let us see. Oh, I think I added it wrong place. Sorry. It is actually response model here. In our endpoint name, we should add response, not add the value. So let me refresh it again. Yep. So if I try to run this one, you can see it gives internal server error because it failed our validation. There are 3 validations that we need to return. So we should basically caption this and add it, username, email, and password. Now if we try to run this, you can see 200 because it followed the validation for that admin which have username, email, password. If you don't have the validation of response admin, it will always give a validation error. So a good practice is to have always put your APIs in try catch block, and yep, like that. Yep, this is our try catch. So anything that happens here will run. Even if anything breaks, we'll show a status of an internal server error. So yep. Next thing is how to use service file. So let's say we want to get a random number. Let us add a random number. Let us say number int. Yep. We have a number int, and now we want to generate a random number every time and return it. So what we can do is go to a service file, create a service file for admin, and we can create a function that will return a random number. So that we can import random and generate a number with a random number between 1000, 10,000 something. And now we can import this one in our main file from service.main. We can import this, and here we will just call that function number equals to and write run. So instead of having this code in our main admin file, we try to separate the functionality part, the reusable function. So any kind of it can be also some calculations, and call it in our API. Now if we run this, you can see password. Okay, I did not save that file. Number, unprocessable entity. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yep. Now if we run this, you can see we got a random number. So another validation that failed was because we did not pass the number in our get API. So if we don't pass it, it was failing the validation that we need the number in our body, because we have the body as admin which has a number. So we should always pass the number here, which can be 0 just for starting, but we should pass it in order to get a response. Now next thing is how to add a rate limit. Now writing a rate limit is also pretty simple with a module called slow API. So we can basically go to core and config and create a new file, limit.py, right? And we can, from slow API, we can import the limiter, and we can remote so go get remote address. So what it does is basically get the IP address of your computer from where this API is, like from where the request is coming. Now we can import this in our APIs, and so that allows us to basically add a limiter from component.limiter, and we can add a, no, we can just add the rate limiter. So yeah, if we have, like, let's say we need to add a limit of 10 per minute. Okay, let us see. Okay, yep, and we need to import the request. Yep. So yeah, what we need to do is basically also need to create the request. So request is basically the handler to allow us to pass on to the next call. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, so what this rate limit is, like, we can only make 10 calls per minute on this. So for testing purpose, let us make it 2. And now let us try to call this API multiple times and see what this does. This is the endpoint. 1 time, 2 time, and 3rd time. You can see 2 per minute. We can't call more than that because the rate limit has reached the limit. So that is how we add the rate limitation over on our code base. So this get remote address is not 100% secure, so it should always add authentication over here, so that we validate whether user is valid or not. And whether, instead of having an IP based, you can have it ID based, like user ID based. And lastly, we need to add the middleware. So let us try to create a middleware file also. Middleware. So middleware allows us to basically create any kind of code that will always run when we like whenever we make a request or whenever we do something. So either we can have it in this file, or we can also do it in our main file, since if it's a small middleware, you can just always add it in your main file and it will run. So to add that middleware, you can just go to your API. So @app dot middleware http. So so what it does, app at the middle dot http. So basically, see, it will, whenever a http call is being made to your server or a backend, it will just add some. We can just write a log over here in processing time. What was the processor time for that request? We can log that API call in our logging system if we have. So a lot of things we can add in our middleware. So let us try to make one call. You can see processor time 0.02 seconds. This was made from here. We can make multiple calls. We can 2 per minute. Our processor time middleware call was still made instead, while the middleware also was working. We got 4 to 1 because of rate limit rates. That is the standard error code for rate limits. Now, so this is how we add the middleware. So I think we have covered all our topics. We learned about folder structure. We learned about how to add APIs, how to add validation, how to add rate limit rates, how to add middleware.